our church library. We're beginning a series on the Beatitudes found in Matthew today. Today, we're going to simply lay out the structure of the Beatitudes, sort of what makes them a little bit different, how they're a little bit of a throwback to Old Testament literature. We're going to talk a little bit about how each of them operates internally and how they operate together as a whole. And then over the course of the next couple of months, we're going to take a look at each and every one of them in turn. Some of these weeks we will be here in the library. Other times we might be in the woods. We might be taking a tour of the Moore County Coalition for Human Care, for example, doing other things to help us explicate these very important sayings of Jesus. And that is at core what they are. They are Jesus talking to us. In Matthew, they are part of what is known as the Sermon on the Mount. This is a multi-chapter story, or multi-chapter sermon, which for Matthew is the core of Jesus' teachings. As you may know, in Mark, we have very little of Jesus' teachings, mostly Jesus' actions. In Luke, we have a lot of Jesus' teachings and not so much actions. But in Matthew, we have a whole big block of Jesus' teachings in the Sermon on the Mount. And right at the beginning of the sermon, as Jesus is gathering the crowds around him on top of a hill, he has what we now call the Beatitudes, a series of little verses, short little verses that are set apart in their grammatical structure and in their vocabulary. I'm going to read them to you just right now. I'm reading them to you from the Jerusalem Bible. We don't use the Jerusalem Bible very much in the Episcopal Church. I don't know why. It has an interesting history. For I have fallen in love with it the past 2 years, mostly because, frankly, I think its translation is a little closer to what they would have understood at the time of Jesus. But let me read you the Beatitudes, again, from the Jerusalem Bible. How happy are the poor in spirit, theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Happy the gentle, they shall have the earth for their heritage. Happy those who mourn, they shall be comforted. Happy those who hunger and thirst for what is right, they shall be satisfied. Happy the merciful, they shall have mercy shown them. Happy the pure in heart, they shall see God. Happy the peacemakers, they shall be called sons of God. Happy those who are persecuted in the cause of right, theirs is the kingdom of heaven. 8 little sayings, happy are those. And then usually there's an action that is in our culture and in ancient culture too, not seen as good. Happy are those who mourn, for example. Happy are those who hunger. Happy are those who thirst. And then Jesus turns that on its head and gives those who are mourning, those who are hungry, those who thirst, relief. But not simply relief. A blessing. So we see, it seems to me, I see, or as I read these, 2 really important things stand out. First is the word happy. Oftentimes we translate the word, and I've made a little cheat sheet for myself, Makeros. Makeros is the word in Greek. And at root, that word, in most of blah, blah, blah. Excuse me, I am stumbling over myself. Welcome to my world. Bekeros, generally, in most of Greek literature, if you were reading Homer, for example, that word would be translated as happy. In English biblical translations, we translate that as blessed. And you can see why we in the church make that change. However, in most of Koine Greek, that word is translated mekeros, is translated as happy. At root, it's a word that means enlarged, as in your heart is enlarged, as in your spirit is enlarged, as if you are enlarged. And then secondly, we see that each of these little verses has that same metrical quality. Happy are those who, for they will. Happy are those who take this action, for they will take another action. And this is truly, really remarkable. And we see, I see at least, each of these actions sort of building on each other. 1 and 2. The first couple of Beatitudes really are talking about ourselves. The second Beatitudes, 3 and 4, are really as we start to discover what God's will for ourselves is. And then the next two really starts to talk about how we engage in God's will, how we start to engage in God's care of the world around us. And then the last two, 7 and 8, are really start to talk about how we engage in God's mission to change and make all things new. So this progression, I think, is really, really very super important. And if you're with us for the next 8 weeks, I'll show you that in detail. Well, not in detail, but we'll talk about that a little bit. So I want to thank you again for joining us. Again, we're not going to be here in the library sitting in a chair talking into a camera the whole time. We're going to go out and do things and see things. Don't know what they are yet. We've got 2 months to figure that out. So I do hope that you'll join all of us on that journey. If there's anything at all I can do for you, please reach out and talk to me. The easiest way is to email eec@emmanuel-parish.org.